My wife was letting her male assistant stay in the guest room again, and I finally had to say something. This is the third time this month. Doesn't he have his own place? She shot me a look. Can you please try to be a little more generous? He's my right-hand man. I stared at her. Then what does that make me? Your free butler. My fist tightened. I turned around and grabbed the divorce papers from my desk. If she wanted a butler, she could hire one. I was done. The range hood was still humming in the kitchen, but my hand, gripping the spatula, felt numb. Caleb Reed's voice drifted in from the living room, his tone so familiar you'd think he owned the place. Ava, I put that contract you wanted on your desk. Ethan said you needed to sign it as soon as you got back. I scraped the last of the vegetables onto a serving platter and killed the fan. It was always like this. That project he'd nearly tanked last week, I was the one who pulled 3 all-nighters to salvage it. But to the outside world, he was the one who heroically saved the day. The month before, when he blew a meeting with a major client, I was the one who had to call in 3 favors just to get them back to the table. In Ava's telling, though, it was a story about Caleb's admirable persistence. I'm Ava Sterling's husband, but I've been living like Caleb Reed's ghostwriter, the kind who doesn't even get his name in the acknowledgments. I heard Ava taking off her shoes at the front door. I carried the food out from the kitchen, hoping to catch a word with her. She didn't even glance up, walking straight into the living room to speak to Caleb. You can just stay in the guest room tonight. We have that early pitch tomorrow, so it'll be easier if you're already here. My grip on the platter tightened, my knuckles turning white. This was the 3rd time this month. He always had some excuse to stay over. I brought it up with Ava once before. She called me petty. Caleb is my most valuable team member. What's the big deal if he stays here? It's all for work. For work? Was he also working when he was on a FaceTime call with some girl from marketing in our living room until midnight last night? I set the food down on the dining table, my voice low. Dinner's ready. Ava finally looked at me, her brow furrowed. Is this all you made? Just home stuff. Caleb's been running around all day. You should have made something better to help him recharge. I didn't answer, just pulled out a chair and sat. Caleb ambled over with a grin, clapping me on the shoulder. Ethan's cooking is great, Ava. Don't be so hard on him. His hand on my shoulder felt like a stain. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I shrugged his hand off. Let's just eat. Ava's face darkened. Ethan, what is that attitude? Caleb was just being nice. I picked up my fork and took a bite of green beans, keeping my eyes on my plate. I'm tired. 4 or 5 years, I'd put my own career on hold to manage our life, to handle all the corporate messes and office politics she couldn't deal with, to be the shield for all the crap thrown her way. And what did I get? She treated him like a rising star and me like the hired help. Caleb, of course, played the peacemaker. It's okay, Ava. Ethan's probably just tired from cooking. No big deal. Let's eat. His whole sensitive guy act made me sick. I knew exactly what he was up to. I'd seen the way he looked at Ava. It was more than just an employee's respect for his boss. After dinner, I cleared the plates and went back to the kitchen. I could hear them in the living room talking strategy. The sound of Ava's occasional laughter was sharp, grating. I loaded the dishwasher, then leaned against the doorframe, staring at the blindingly bright chandelier in the living room. 5 years. I had become invisible, a caretaker for an empty shell of a home and a woman who didn't have me in her heart. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ava. Caleb's laptop is on the fritz. Can you look at it for him tomorrow? No, hey, no, please. It was a command sent to a subordinate. I stared at the message for a full minute before deleting the entire conversation thread. I walked into the home office and pulled a folder from the bottom drawer. The divorce papers I'd had drawn up months ago. I placed them squarely on the center of the coffee table where no one could miss them. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to argue about. I'd said it all 100 times over the past 5 years. She never listened, and I was done talking. I went to our bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out the suitcase I'd packed last week. The sound of the zipper was quiet, but in the silence of the house, it felt deafeningly loud. At the front door, I slipped on my shoes and took one last look at the living room. Ava and Caleb were still huddled together, their heads bowed in conversation. The lamp cast their shadows long across the floor, an infuriatingly perfect picture of partnership. I pulled my suitcase behind me, opened the door quietly, and stepped out. The moment the door clicked shut, I heard Ava's voice. What was that noise? And Caleb's reply. Sounded like the front door. Maybe Ethan went to take out the trash. I didn't look back. I just walked to the elevator with my suitcase. The descending floor numbers felt like a countdown on 5 wasted years of my life. On the ground floor, I pushed open the main door. The cool night air felt good on my face, a welcome relief. I looked up at the sky. The moon was bright, surrounded by a spray of stars. It turns out the sky is still beautiful, even without that home, without Ava. I walked away, my steps light but steady. Finally, a chance to live for myself. Outside the gates of our condo complex, I flagged down a taxi and gave the driver the address of an extended stay hotel I'd picked out weeks ago. The car radio was playing some old, sad rock ballad, but I felt nothing. All those sleepless nights, tossing and turning, were finally over. I checked into the hotel and dragged my suitcase into the room. It was small but clean. The air didn't smell of Caleb's cheap cologne. I took out my phone, powered it off, and tossed it on the nightstand. Starting today, Ava's company, Caleb's screw-ups, none of it was my problem anymore. For the next few days, I kept my phone off. I spent my days exploring the neighborhood and my nights reading in my room. The hotel's continental breakfast was simple: bagels, yogurt, lukewarm coffee, but it tasted better than any of the gourmet meals I'd cooked at home. On the 5th morning, as I was eating a bagel, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It took me a second to remember I'd finally turned it on to charge the night before. The screen flashed unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then swiped to answer. "Ethan, where are you?" It was Caleb, and his voice was thick with panic. "There's a crisis at the office." I took a bite of my bagel and said nothing. "We've been hit by a ransomware attack. The entire client database is encrypted. It's all gone. The IT guys are useless," he practically yelled into the phone. "Ava's out of the country on business, and I'm totally screwed. Ethan, you have to come back and help." I slowly chewed my bagel, feeling absolutely nothing. In the past, how many times had I been the one to pull an all-nighter to fix a mess exactly like this? And what did they say back then? Well, that's the one thing Ethan is good for. And it's not like he has anything better to do. "I can't help you," I said, and hung up. Then I blocked the number. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. Another unknown number. He was probably using a desk phone. I declined the call and switched my phone to airplane mode. Now, do they remember me? Where were they before? I knew exactly what Caleb was capable of. He had a marketing degree, but could barely handle a VLOOKUP in Excel. He was good at one thing: fooling people like Ava, who only ever paid attention to the bottom line. A few times in the past, when the company network had minor issues, I had fixed them remotely. He'd stood there watching me, unable to even remember the basic steps. Now, with a disaster this big, what could he possibly do? I finished my bagel and drank the last of my coffee. Down the hall, a vacuum cleaner hummed. It was a real sound in a real world, not like at home, where I felt like I had to hold my breath. That afternoon, I turned off airplane mode to check for messages from friends. The moment it connected, a flood of missed call notifications from Ava popped up, followed by a series of texts. The first: "Ethan, what the hell is this?" "Caleb said you hung up on him." The second: "The company is in serious trouble. You need to get back here and fix this now." The third: "I'm warning you, Ethan, don't you dare throw a tantrum at a time like this." The last one had been sent half an hour ago. "Please, I'm begging you, just come back. Once this is over, we can talk." I looked at the texts and laughed out loud. Talk? What was there to talk about? How she could continue to use me as free labor while making space in her life for her and Caleb? I deleted the messages without replying, then opened up Google Maps to look for a nearby coffee shop. Better to sit somewhere else than stew over this mess in a hotel room. The cafe was quiet. I found a table by the window and ordered a black Americano. I'd just taken 2 sips when my phone rang again. It was Ava. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before finally answering. "Ethan, where in God's name are you?" Her voice was sharp, laced with an impatience she wasn't bothering to hide. "Caleb said he can't reach you. Do you have any idea how serious this is?" "No, I don't," I said, leaning back in my chair and watching people walk by outside. "I don't work for the company anymore. And I'm not your husband anymore. This has nothing to do with me." "What are you talking about?" She sounded stunned. "What do you mean, not my husband?" I left the divorce papers on the coffee table. "You'll figure out when you get home," I said, my voice calm. "Ava, we're We're over. Are you insane? Her voice shot up. You pick now of all times to do this. Are you doing this on purpose? On purpose? I laughed. I put up with this for 5 years. The fact that I'm only leaving now is me giving you a courtesy. I don't have time for this, she snapped, clearly wanting to sidestep the divorce issue. Caleb says you're the only one who can fix this. Get back here. I'll pay you whatever you want. My hand tightened around my phone. A surge of anger rose in my chest. Pay me. Did she really think money was why I was with her? Ava, I said, taking a deep breath to keep my voice steady. First, I'm not coming back. Second, tell Caleb to never contact me again. The thought of him makes me sick. Third, sign the divorce papers and have them sent to my lawyer. Before she could respond, I hung up and blocked her number 2. 5 The Americano was bitter, but there was a sweet aftertaste. Maybe if I'd done this sooner, I wouldn't have had to waste so many years of my life. Back at the hotel that evening, I opened my laptop to search for apartments to rent. Just as I clicked on Zillow, a local news alert popped up in the corner of my screen. The headline read, Seattle tech firm Sterling Digital suffers suspected data breach, stock stumbles. I clicked on it. The article was vague, saying only that the company had yet to issue a formal statement. That had Caleb's fingerprints all over it. He was probably trying to spin some story to cover his tracks. His greatest talent was sweeping things under the rug. Every time a project he was leading had a problem, he'd hide it from Ava until the last possible second, then come to me to clean up his mess. With something this big, he was definitely lying through his teeth. I closed the news tab and went back to my apartment search. A 1-bedroom with good light. A little outside the city center would be fine. I just wanted quiet. As I was scrolling, my phone rang. It was a landline, looked like the office number. I hesitated, then answered. Ethan, it's me, Kevin. It was one of the junior guys from the IT department. We'd always gotten along. What's up? I asked. Man, you have to come back. The company's about to go under, Kevin said, his voice frantic. Caleb has no idea what he's doing. He made us reboot the main server 3 times today. We lost even more data. I frowned. Hasn't Ava come back yet? She's on a flight back now. Lands tomorrow morning, Kevin said with a sigh. Look, Caleb was just in here yelling at us, saying IT wasn't cooperating. But we all see what's happening. He doesn't have a clue. Telling me this won't help. I cut him off. I'm not involved with the company anymore. But, Kevin started, just do your job, man, I said. Stay out of the drama. I hung up. 6 the guys in IT were smart. They knew what was up. Too bad Ava couldn't see it. All she saw was this smooth-talking Caleb. She treated the people who actually did the work like furniture. I shut my laptop and lay down on the bed. The ceiling was a clean, uninterrupted white. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in a long time, felt how easy it was to fall asleep without the weight of other people's chaos. Tomorrow, I go look at some apartments, settle down, start my new life. As for Ava, her company, and that idiot Caleb, they could figure it out themselves. Ethan Vance was officially off the clock. The next morning, I had just finished a walkthrough of a 1-bedroom apartment with a nice balcony when my phone rang. Unknown number, but a local area code. I answered. Ethan, it's Ava. Her voice was heavy with exhaustion, but an undercurrent of anger was still there. Where are you? I leaned against the hallway railing, looking down at the trees below. What do you need? I'm at your hotel. The front desk said you checked out. She paused. You have to come back and deal with this. I told you. It has nothing to do with me. I took out the key the landlord had given me and tested the lock on the apartment I'd just seen. Ethan, her voice cracked with frustration. All of that client data, you were the one who organized and archived it. You're the only one who knows where the offline backups are. I smiled as the key turned smoothly in the lock. Really? What about Caleb? You seem to trust him so much. Don't talk to me about him. Her voice trembled as if I'd hit a nerve. What is it that you want? I don't want anything. The door swung open, and I stepped into the empty apartment. I just want to live my own life. I was wrong, okay? Her tone suddenly softened. I took you for granted. I was blind. Just help me this one last time. After this, we can. Ava, I interrupted her, walking over to the balcony. The sun felt warm on my arms. It's too late. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then I heard her sharp intake of breath. You knew this was going to happen, didn't you? You've been waiting for this, just waiting to watch me fail. There it was. The blame shift. Always the same. Think whatever you want. I hung up and blocked this number too. 7, just as I put my phone away, I heard footsteps. The property manager, a kind-faced older woman, was standing in the doorway. "So, young man, what do you think of the place?" "I love it. I'll take it." I pulled out my ID. "Let's sign the lease." After the paperwork was done, she handed me the keys. "The grocery store and clinic are both super close. Let me know if you need anything at all." I smiled, thanked her, and closed the door. Time to unpack. It wasn't much. One suitcase with a few changes of clothes and my laptop. I set the laptop up on the windowsill. As it booted, a notification for an encrypted email popped up. The sender was Kevin, the kid from IT. I clicked it open. The password was my birthday. The email contained a single sentence. "Ethan, Caleb found that emergency backup drive you made and hid it. He's telling everyone he's going to solve the crisis himself." Attached was a photo, clearly taken on the sly. It showed Caleb slipping a black external hard drive into the inner pocket of his suit jacket, a smug, triumphant grin on his face. I stared at the photo for a moment, then deleted the email. I wasn't surprised. That's how he operated. It's how he got this far. That afternoon, I went to Target for some essentials. On the way back, my phone rang again. This time, it was my lawyer. "Mr. Vance, Miss Sterling's attorney contacted me. She is contesting the divorce and insists on meeting with you in person." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, walking slowly with my shopping bags. "She said that if you refuse to meet, she will." My lawyer paused. "She will sue you for fraudulent transfer of marital assets." I stopped in my tracks and laughed out loud. Transfer of assets? For the last 5 years, I hadn't taken a dime from her. I've been living off my own savings. And now she had the nerve to pull this. "Let her sue," I told him. "Just let me know what you need from me." Hanging up, I suddenly felt bone-tired. I always thought that if I just endured it, things would get better. We were married, after all. Now I realized that some people just aren't worth the pain. As I approached my new building, I saw a familiar black sedan parked by the entrance. Ava was standing beside it. She was in a sharp business suit, but her hair was a mess, and I could see the dark circles under her eyes even from a distance. When she saw me, she hurried over. "Ethan, how long are you going to keep hiding?" I walked past her, heading for the building in trance. "Stop." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "I fired Caleb." I paused and looked back at her. "And that's my problem because—" She bit her lip. "That encrypted drive. You're the one who made it, right? Caleb hid it. He was going to take the credit." "Okay," I said, pulling my arm free. "Good to know. And you're not even angry?" She looked at me, a flicker of disbelief in her eyes. "What's the point of being angry?" I started up the stairs. "I've spent enough time being angry." She followed me. "Ethan, I know I was awful to you. I depended on you too much, and I trusted Caleb too much." "You didn't depend on me. You used me," I said, unlocking my apartment door. I stood aside. "Come in. Say what you have to say, and then leave. I'm busy." She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the small apartment. "This is where you're living." "What? You expected the Four Seasons." I set my shopping bags down. "It's better than being in that house, looking at people who make my skin crawl." Her face paled. She pulled a file from her purse. "This is Caleb's termination letter, and a recording of him admitting he hid the drive." "I didn't take it. Why are you showing me this?" "I want you to know that I see him for who he is now," she said, her voice dropping. "Ethan, can we please start over? The company can't function without you and I." "Ava, look around," I said, gesturing out the window. "This is my apartment. It's small, it's nothing special, but it's peaceful." I stepped closer to her. "Do you know why Caleb felt bold enough to pull a stunt like that? Because he saw you clearly. He knows you can't survive without someone to clean up your messes. It used to be me, and he wanted to be my replacement." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. "You don't need me. You need a fixer," I said. I pulled out my phone and played a voice memo. It was from a few months ago, when Caleb had too much to drink and got chatty in our living room. His voice, slurred but clear, filled the small apartment. "Ethan, man, you're pathetic, living off a woman. As soon as I make Ava mine, this house, this company, it's all going to be mine." The recording continued with screenshots of inappropriate texts he'd sent me, one after another. Ava's face drained of all color. She started to tremble. He said that. And you know it now." I turned off the phone. "I tried to tell you before. You said I was trying to stir up trouble. You said I was petty. I was wrong. I was so wrong. She covered her face, her shoulders shaking. Ethan, please, just give me one more chance. I looked at her, feeling nothing. No anger, no pity. It was like watching a stranger cry. I gave you plenty of chances. I walked to the door and opened it. You should go. My lawyer will send over a new copy of the papers. Just sign them. She looked up, her eyes red. Can you really be this cruel? I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Some wounds can't be healed with an apology. Some paths, once taken, lead to places you can never come back from. She stood there for a long time before finally walking out. At the doorway, she paused. Ethan, if Caleb had never been in the picture, do you think it would have been different? I closed the door without answering. I'd asked myself that same question 1,000 times, but it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was finally moving forward. The moment the door closed, I heard a muffled sob from the hallway. I leaned against the door, listening as the sound faded, finally cut off by the ding of the elevator. The apartment was suddenly silent, except for the rustle of leaves in the wind outside. I walked to the balcony and reached into my pocket for a cigarette, then remembered I'd quit. Ava used to complain about the smell, so I quit cold turkey. Now, I kind of wished I had something to do with my hands. My phone vibrated. A text from my lawyer. Ava has agreed to sign. Her assistant will have the documents messengered over tomorrow morning. I replied with a simple okay and put the phone away. The clouds on the horizon were breaking apart, revealing streaks of a sunset so red it looked almost fake. The signed divorce papers arrived the next afternoon. I flipped to the last page. Ava's signature was a familiar, confident scrawl, the same one she used on multi-million-dollar contracts. But at the very end of her name, there was a tiny blot of ink, as if the pen had rested there for too long. I put the papers in a drawer, filing them away with years of old company documents I'd handled for her. It felt like a fitting end to that chapter. A week later, Kevin from IT sent me a text with a screenshot of a news article. The headline was sensational. Former Sterling digital assistant arrested in connection with corporate sabotage and fraud. The article explained that Caleb hadn't just tried to take credit for fixing the breach. He had been colluding with the hackers, planning to sell the client data on the dark web. Ava had discovered the plot and immediately called the police. Kevin added a message. Ethan, Ava found the primary backups you'd hidden off-site. The company is stable now. I replied, good to know, and didn't ask any more questions. Those were her battles to fight now. My new apartment slowly started to feel like a home. I bought a few succulents for the balcony from a clearance sale at a local nursery. This seemed to be thriving. I mounted a corkboard on the living room wall for my design sketches. My degree was in product design, a skill I'd let atrophy for years. Now I was finally dusting it off. One evening, I was in the kitchen making pasta when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was Ava. She was dressed in a simple sundress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked less like a CEO and more like a normal person. In her hands, she held a thermal container. I hesitated, then opened the door. I was in the neighborhood. I brought you some soup, she said, offering the container. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The kind my mom makes. You always liked it. I didn't take it, but stepped aside to let her in. What's up? She came in, her gaze drifting from the succulents on the balcony to the sketches on the wall. You're designing again. Yeah, I said, closing the door. Just landed a small freelance gig. Getting back into it. She set the container on the small dining table and opened the lid. The rich aroma of chicken noodle soup filled the air. It did smell like the soup I used to love. Things at the office. They've mostly settled down, she said, staring at the soup. Not at me. The IT guys said your backups contained a ton of optimization protocols you'd built over the years. It saved us a massive amount of work. It was just stuff I did in my spare time, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. No big deal. She finally looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot. Ethan, I know it's too late to say anything meaningful, but I still want to thank you. Don't, I said, taking a sip of water. Those protocols were part of my job. We were still married then. Her hands clenched the tablecloth, her knuckles white. I've done a lot of thinking. You were right. I didn't depend on you. I used you like a tool. 10. The day of the data breach, she began, her voice cracking, I realized I didn't even know the password to our own main server, because you always handled it. She gave a bitter little laugh. I didn't even know that you were the one who dealt with the IRS audit 2 years ago, that you spent weeks handling it so I wouldn't have to. I had never told her about those things. I used to think that a husband and wife shouldn't keep score. Now I know that if you don't speak up for yourself, some people will never see what you do. It's all in the past, I said, setting my glass down. I'll keep the soup. You should go. She stared at me for a long moment, then asked quietly, Did you ever love me at all? I froze. Of course I had. How could she even ask that? I remember the early days when I would pick her up on my scooter after she worked late, and we'd share a bowl of noodles from a street cart, and it felt like the most perfect meal in the world. I remembered when she landed her first big account, how she'd cried in my arms for half an hour, promising me she was going to build us a better life. But somewhere along the way, the life she built had no room left for me. I did, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I loved you a lot, but love isn't supposed to be a resource you drain until it's empty, Ava. Tears welled in her eyes and fell onto the tablecloth, creating a small, dark stain. Could you wait for me, just for a little while? Let me learn how to be a real partner, how to build a real home. Don't wait, I said, shaking my head. I've already moved on. I pointed to the sketches on my wall. I'm designing a new line of kids' toys. I have to go to the manufacturer next week to check on the prototypes. I also signed up for a baking class on weekends. I'm learning how to make sourdough. It's fun. I smiled because it was true. My life is good now. It's quiet, but it's mine. She looked at my smile, and the last bit of hope seemed to drain from her face. She slowly stood up. I understand. At the door, she paused without turning around. That little succulent with the purple flowers. That was always your favorite. I noticed it's blooming. It looks happy. Yeah, I said. It is. The door closed softly behind her. There were no footsteps in the hall. She must have stood there for a long time. I walked to the table and looked at the soup. Most of the steam was gone. I ladled some into a bowl and took a sip. It tasted the same, but it wasn't as good as I remembered. The next morning, I washed the thermal container and left it outside my door for her to pick up. When I left for a meeting that afternoon, a small potted plant, a pot hose with vibrant green, leaves still dotted with water, was sitting in its place. I brought it inside and set it on the windowsill next to my succulents. Sunlight streamed in, making the water droplets on the leaves glitter. On my way to the factory, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was just one sentence. Ethan, I wish you a future filled with peace and happiness. I deleted the message without replying. Outside the car window, the trees blurred into a green streak, like all the days now behind me. I guess a marriage is like driving a car. Both people need to be looking at the road. If one person is staring at the dashboard while the other is looking out the window, you're bound to crash. After a crash, some people want to stay and fix the car. Others just want to find a new road. I chose a new road. It might not be a highway, and the scenery might not be spectacular, but at least my hands are on the wheel. The light ahead turned red, and I eased my foot onto the brake. I watched a little girl run across the crosswalk, laughing as she held up a giant stick of cotton candy. The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator, and the car moved smoothly forward. It was a good feeling. The sky was blue, the air was warm, and for the first time in a long time, I was living for myself.